Hello, my name's Nicola Hancock. In partnership with many service users or people with lived experience, I've been on the journey of developing the RAS-DS, so Recovery Assessment Scale, Domains and Stages over many years. In this short video clip, we're going to focus in on simply how to use it and how to score it. There are other clips on the website that you can look at for other aspects and information about the tool. So a little bit of background. Hopefully you've been onto the website and you've had a look and you understand what the RAS-DS is, but in brief, it's a short-ish 38 item self-report measure of mental health recovery, and it's self-report as in the service user or consumer, whatever language you use in the country you're in. It is the person themselves that fills in and does a self-assessment using the RAS-DS. So it's designed to help both you and the person obviously themselves learn more about themselves and their recovery. So you can see I've put on the right-hand side of the slides just some themes that came out of qualitative research we did in 2015. Now we've done a number of studies since then, and whether it's with a younger population, that's all been Australian, and so we're just starting now to get some international data, but these are all Australian themes that are using particular quotes, but there are many consumers or service users that have said the same thing. So they talk about it helping them to understand their life and their recovery journey better. They like how it makes them think. It would be good to use with goal setting. I wish more people did, but that's another video clip talking about that. Understand, it's very easy to understand, interesting, and the questions are meaningful to people. The survey questions were not too personal. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. It helped me notice change. So people that have used it more than once, they could really look at the change that had happened in terms of their own recovery journeys. And I love this sort of quote where people are talking about that my case manager understood me and I understood me. So this sort of shared building of shared understanding. And the other thing that I think is really quite lovely is how many people talk about it helping them to be able to talk about stuff that they don't normally feel comfortable talking about with their mental health worker. So as a conversation breaker. So because you can see that I'm arguing really that it's as much an intervention or a getting to know the person and building relationship tool as it is a tool that measures changes or measures outcomes of service delivery. It should be used. It should be introduced to the service user or consumer as an invitation to engage and an invitation where you have genuine interest in understanding and getting to know the person, rather than using it rather than introducing it to the service user in a kind of apologetic way that says, I'm really sorry you have to do this. I know you're asked to fill out lots of things. That sets a message of, I don't value this. So presenting in a way that shows genuine value and genuine interest in getting to know the person's own perspective on what's happening for them. So standardise. So part of what we'll talk about here is just keep having a standard way, standard practice in the way you introduce it, but also the way you share it with people and the way you help people to complete it. Okay. So I'm going to start with some tough questions. So what ifs, the what if question. So what if some of the people I work with find it too hard? Now what we've done a number of different studies with hundreds and hundreds of service users and their service users are having a tough time with their illness. And what we find is that way more than 80% of service users have said it's either easy or very easy to complete. But there's a small minority who do find it hard. So the question is, how much can you help people? And it's an important question in terms of, are you still using the tool as it was intended, or are you starting to have too much impact on the tool? So here's some answers. One, it is absolutely okay to read out the questions to people as they fill it in, but it's really important that it's them that has the pen and it's them that completes it. So you can read, you send up to the next question and then you read it out, and once they've scored it, okay, now the next question, you can absolutely read it, but please don't interpret it. So don't reword it in your own words. And so if someone says, I don't know what this question means, I don't know what they're asking from this question, as much as possible, don't try and rephrase it, because then the next time they use it, they'll be completing it with a different question in their mind to some degree. So these sorts of questions, this might be a helpful way to phrase it when someone says, I'm not sure what this means. Saying something like, the important thing is what it means to you. It might mean different things to different people, so mark it in the way that makes sense to you. Something like that. Importantly, please don't helicopter. And I hope you know what I mean. We use the word helicopter parents, don't we? But here we're talking about, don't hover over people and make them feel like you're observing and watching the way they score. It's really important that people score it in a way that's truthful to them and not to please you, and not to fill it in the way you would fill it in for them. So you're really at risk of going, really? Are you sure you want to fill it in? Don't put yourself in that place. So sit back, give people space, and let them complete it absolutely how they would complete it on their own. It is completely fine, and many organisations and services that are community-based give the tool to consumers or service users to take home, and they get them to bring them back at the next session, or to take it away and sit outside and let's catch up in. It typically takes people, so we've got about more than 80% of people who've used it say it takes under 15 minutes. Now, we didn't ask for a shorter time than that, so it was whatever it is, under 15 minutes. Some people said it took a bit longer. And when we explored why, majority of people said the reason it took them longer is because they really wanted to think about the tool and think about the way they wanted to answer. Now, I think, to me, that's gold. That says they're really engaged and thinking about it. But for some people, reading it out to them might make it easier. So one of the things that's worth thinking about is that there is on the website a RAS-DS Plus option, and I love it. We used to get RAS-DS data given to us as paper-based forms, and yes, the scores were there, but the beauty was in the essays that people wrote all the way around their scores. So I think there's something lost when it's just numbering, and people often want to articulate why am I writing like this, or what do I think about this comment, and it's lovely for them to be able to reflect back on later, but it also is really lovely way to start conversations after the person's completed the RAS-DS and you're having a conversation about what they've scored. So have a look at the RAS-DS Plus. I think it's beautiful. And finally, the RAS-DS is divided into 4 domains. Some programs that are really focused in on a particular aspect of recovery actually only choose to use 1 domain. And the psychometrics, I'm not going there in this, but it's actually fine to use a single domain. It works well. However, even if you're going to use the whole RAS-DS, it's okay to do 1 domain at a time. What you really want to do is have them quite close together time-wise, so you're not having an impact because of time. But yeah, one domain at a time is absolutely fine. So another question, another what if? What if I don't agree with the way they're rating it? They're rating it way higher than they should do, or they're rating it way lower than they should do. It is fine. So it is their rating. It is where are they seeing themselves at this point in time, and there are many things that will influence how a person sees where they're at that point in time. And that's the important information you're collecting from RAS-DS. So please wait until they've finished and then have those conversations, and they can be really respectful, and you can show genuine curiosity and interest and explore their ratings and their thoughts around different things. And we hear repeatedly how powerful those conversations are when they're facilitated by looking together at the scorings people have made and comments if they've added those in around the RAS-DS. So exploring and understanding what is it and why did they rate certain statements in the way they did, and here are just some possible questions that you might ask, but you'll find your own way of asking the same kind of questions. So you might ask, can you tell me more about why you rated this one like this? Can you help me understand that? Or what would it take for us to get this one up to a four score? What do you reckon we could do together to help you get it up there? Or, and I think this is really important, when you look at the RAS-DS, which are the things that are most important to you, or what do you want us to work on? And what we hear is that it's not always those things that they rate the lowest. They might rate it lower and say, I really don't care, that's not important to me, but these things are, and I might have rated them as a 3, but I need them to be a 4 for life to be good. So they're the things I really want to focus on. And finally, it's so important to be able to look at how people have scored the RAS-DS and notice the celebrations. Don't always look for what can we work on, what can we improve. Don't jump straight there. Really, really engage and celebrate the things that where people are saying, this is going well for me, this is I've succeeded, or I'm achieving, or I'm really happy with how this part of my recovery is going. Celebrate those things too. So then I have one more question. I think it's one more. So should we avoid sad and teary? Now, the reason I've got this here is because when we've gone around and done face-to-face training with people, one of the comments we hear quite often is, oh, I don't always use this, or I'm very selective about who I offer to do the RAS-DS with, because for some people it makes them really emotional. And someone was saying, oh, they got really, the last question in the RAS-DS is about feeling okay about their family situation. And for some people, that's a really emotional question. And it's a question that really matters to them. And so, do we want to avoid that question? I hope not. I think it's really important that we working in mental health are totally comfortable engaging with people in difficult conversations, and so I guess the critical thing is to know that for some people it may make them feel emotional, and they may need you to give them some time and some space and support. So so not booking someone in for a 15-minute session where you've got someone bang on afterwards that's not flexible and you can't change. I guess just being aware of that potential need for someone to have a bit more time if they are being emotional. Okay, so let's go to the practical stuff. So RAS-DS scoring. It's really easy to score. So there are some instruments where you have to adjust the scores, etc. And we have done enough analysis of the tool to know that you do not need to do that. So the raw scores are absolutely fine and good, perfect. So you can either get a total score from the RAS-DS from all 4 domains, or you can get a separate score for each of the domains, so 4 different scores as well as a total. And I think that's often the most clinically, practically useful for consumers to really be able to see, how do my scores differ across those different domains? Does that make sense to me? What's that about? Is there a particular domain of recovery that I want to target when I look at this? I think it's really helpful. Now, all of the ways to score are in the manual, and I will not walk you through it here, but I'll just show you what it looks like in a tick. You can always contact us if you're confused, but even me with rubbish maths it's easy. So the critical things are to remember that you don't include missing items. So don't count, if someone doesn't score an item, if someone chooses not to answer a question, then don't score that as a 0. It needs to not be included, and the scoring, make sure you don't do that. And also it's better to have a percentage score if you are doing domain, if you're doing separate domain scores, because some domains have more items in them, more questions in them. So of course they're going to look like their numbers higher just because there's more numbers, and that doesn't make sense. So if people are going to want to look at the differences for themselves across those different domains, it makes a lot more sense, and it's much easier to make sense of if you convert it to a percentage score. So this is what it looks like in the website, in the manual, which is on the website. So in the manual, it talks you through exactly the steps to take for each of the domains, which is exactly the same, except you divide it by the number of items in that domain, etc. So hopefully it makes easy sense. So interpreting the scores, we often get emails from people around the globe saying, how do I interpret this? What equals recovery? And so I'm going to have there's 2 slides about interpreting scores. So firstly, let's talk about how do I interpret scores when I'm looking at one individual person's data? How do I interpret it with them as an individual? And so this is our thoughts. Firstly, and most importantly, recovery is not this end destination. You get to this score and you equal recovery. That is not what personal recovery is. We know that it's a journey, and it's a journey that is non-linear and it doesn't have an end destination. So in terms of interpreting it, the interpretation comes through the exploration even, and discussion with the individual person. You can look at the domain scores and the comparisons and have a talk about those, and does that make sense for them? So is the social domain, which we're connecting and belonging, might be a score, might be much lower, for example, than the doing things I value domain, or the mastering my illness domain. So which parts of recovery are potentially are they potentially less far down the journey on, and which parts of recovery are they doing really well in? Yeah. But also which domains and which items matter to them, which ones are important, which are the things that they feel will help them move forward most. And again, it may not be the domain or the item that is scored lowest. We've had that conversation already, and I've had that one already. So then in terms of the non-linear recovery being non-linear, it's important when you're coming back, when someone's completed the RAS-DS once and then they do it again, whether it's post an intervention or whether it's just 3 or 6 months. I think it's better to leave it to 6 months, but some people, it's kind of a requirement or an expectation that's more often. I think it's important for each service user to have some say in what feels right for them when they feel ready. And we certainly hear stories of consumers saying, it's time, I want to redo that thing, that recovery score measure again. So, but when it's done a second time and you're comparing results, it's really important to have those conversations to explore what those scores mean. And so it doesn't always mean that they're less well or less recovered if their scores go up or down. It's important to look at it. So I'll give you an example of one, a really concrete example. So somebody had really, really strong scores on their social, on their connecting and belonging elements of the tool, and the doing things I value scores were a little bit lower. Now 6 months later they redid the tool and they had completely switched. So they were doing things that they valued and were valued by others, but their social or that connecting and belonging kind of items had really dropped. And so this is an anecdote from a clinician. So when they sat down and talked about it, it made complete sense to them in terms of what's happening is the person has started working, and by starting to work, they have connected into a new community that they still don't feel like connected to or belonging to. They're quite lonely. So they're doing work, they value it, what they're doing is valued by others, they're happy that they have a job, but they've lost this connection. They've lost the community they had before from the program they used to go to during the day where they had mates and friends. So it made sense. So then there was this opportunity to say, okay, so now what do we do? How do we find that balance here, and what do we together need to do to address this? Yeah, so that's just one of many examples I could give you of why of course things will go up and down. Even though we know the tool is really good and sensitive to change, sometimes the change will come up, won't always be in the upward direction. So I'm now going to talk about interpreting scores when you're just using the RAS-DS to measure program outcomes, or as well as. So this is how do we interpret it when we're measuring outcomes of a program? So everybody in the service does the RAS-DS at the beginning, everybody in the service does the RAS-DS at the end or after the program that we've run for 8 weeks, or whatever it is that you're doing. So then interpreting it is really looking at, you can either look at the total score comparisons and you're looking at change. So has there been change? You can look in terms of the totals, you can look at change scores in terms of the domains. And I think when you think about what's the logic of your program, what's the intention of your program, what domains would you expect? You know, what are you targeting? What is the point of the program? And therefore, which of the domains would you anticipate or expect to change because of someone's engagement in that program? So if it's a social program, perhaps it is that connecting and belonging domain you're anticipating would change. You'd want to seek out statistical analyses and advice or support to do the analysis, and obviously you can make contact with us if you want some guidance or support with that, and the email's there. We've also got an Excel spreadsheet which might be really useful. It's not perfect, it's a bit clunky, and one day I will get some good funding and do a lovely app for everybody, but for now we've got a couple of Excel spreadsheets that make it helpful for you to do two things. One, convert it into graphs so that it's more visibly useful for consumers or service users, and the other one is a good way of it doing the adding. The formulas are built in, so it'll add up the data for you for this kind of program evaluation where you want to enter everybody's scores in. Anyway, that's an option, just email us. Okay, so just some basic other information about using the RAS-DS. There are a number of translations. There might be one missing on here, so we're constantly having people make contact with us and translate it. So they're up on the website and they're freely available. Now this map is where the RAS-DS is being used, and I can see it's out of date already. So we've got some people in Egypt using it, in Northern Africa, and we've got some people in South America using it, in Brazil, etc. So it's being used widely. So these are the sorts of programs that are using it, and I'm sure we've missed some, but it gives you a feel for the types of services and programs that are using RAS-DS. It's being used by a lot of veteran programs. It's being used in inpatient programs, inpatient rehabilitation programs, both private and government services, in a lot of community programs, recovery programs across the mental health sector. It's being used for individual programs as well as group programs. A lot of the group programs and individual programs also use the workbook, and I'm not really going to, I've got a slide on it, so I'll show you that in a minute, but incorporate the workbook as well as using the RAS-DS scoring throughout. Drug and alcohol programs, private practitioners, peer workers and peer-run programs use it beautifully. I think they use it better than a lot of other clinicians. So I'm thrilled to see that it's mushrooming in this community, with this workforce. Forensic programs and of course university and research programs are using it too. Okay, here's the little workbook that I talked about. So the workbook, you know, we developed this workbook. We got a grant to do it because a lot of mental health workers were saying, we've done the tool and now I don't know how to help them address the aspects of recovery that they've identified as being really important to them. So here's a self-help. So it could be consumer could, or service user could have this workbook for themselves and work through it themselves, but it could absolutely be a beautiful thing to use in partnerships. And we also have a lot of group programs internationally who are now using it in a group context, which I think is quite lovely, because then you get the reciprocal sharing of strategies and etc. So have a squizzy, because it's on the website. Have a look at it. It was developed by Grant and the OT team. It's very practical and accessible. So, and it's all very activity based. We're all, other than Grant, we're all occupational therapists, so maybe that is why. Now it's structured so that it's completely aligned to the workbook. So completely aligned to the domains of the RAS-DS. So there's one section for each of the RAS-DS domains. And yes, we've got an American version. If anyone wants that, just give us an email. A team over there wanted to change it. But then I've spoken to a lot of people from other countries that use it, and they say, yeah, there's some Aussieisms in it, but in fact they're quite fun. And they enjoy having a chuckle at our Aussie examples. But you're cool. There's definitely an American version too. So here's where you can access it. Hopefully you already know that because you're looking at this. You are super welcome to email me or give me a call or email the RAS-DS team if you've got any questions, if you want to get the Excel spreadsheets, if you want to discuss how you're analysing your data or anything like that, you're super welcome to make contact with us. Yeah. And I think the last slide is just simply a whole bunch of publications that are sort of from the beginning of the journey of the developing the RAS-DS right through, and there's probably more to add. You can see here we've used it with an early intervention program. So we know that it's working well for people up to from about 16 upwards. Below that, not sure. And I suspect perhaps not, but for adults, yeah. Okay. Thank you.